There are 6 ways to monetize any podcast. So today we're going through all 6 of them, even the most controversial ones that people hate that I talk about. Because to be honest, I don't mind how you monetize. I just want to make sure that you do. So here's 6 ways to monetize. Let's get started. This is the one that everybody thinks they want. Because they go on TikTok, they see people with millions of views, they see a thing that's sponsored by Athletic Greens or whatever. They watch Joe Rogan, they think, oh, okay, you got to get a sponsor, you got to get 8 sleep. I would say don't do this if you need to still grow your business. If you have a business and you're like, you know what, I make so much money, at this point, we don't need any more business. Okay, maybe now then you might want to think about sponsorship, right? But if you need to promote your own business, then I would not be getting paid by other businesses to promote their business. If there are people who are your target market who don't know you exist, then don't get sponsors. Just keep pushing your business, right? Because that's the goal, right? The goal is association, right? Your name with the thing you do. And if you still have to do that, listen, does Tony Robbins, can he get sponsors now? Hell yeah. Everybody knows who Tony Robbins is. Can Rogan get sponsored? Yeah. Can like an NBC news anchor or CNN or Fox News anchor get sponsors? Yeah, people know who they are, right? So it levels the game. But this is a thing that, especially also, if you got to think about it, listen, we're looking at hundreds of views here, maybe thousands. I mean, we get 1 million a year on LinkedIn. And I'm still not taking sponsors. So sponsors are great. It's really nice. It's predictable recurring revenue, which is awesome. But now you're on the hook for promoting their business. So you're working for them. So they just become another client. The next one that's super realistic, being an affiliate, right? Affiliate marketing works really well for smaller businesses, smaller audiences, niche, right? Now, the thing is, it's quantity, right? How many Novo people do I need to get to sign up for Novo for me to be making thousands and tens of thousands from my affiliate link? That's not the point of affiliate. You don't want to become an affiliate marketer. But myself as a podcast strategist who has an audience of 20,000 people, it actually would benefit you if I told you what software to use. And you're not going to get mad that I'm making $5 on the back end, right? So that's why affiliates makes more sense than sponsors, because affiliates is you don't have to work extra and you still get paid. So what's the waterline though? How much money can I expect to make if I get an affiliate sponsorship if I'm a CPA, I get an affiliate sponsorship with an accounting software? How much money can I expect to make? I'm talking hundreds a year, maybe thousands. The way I look at it is this. You have a software that you use, right? Your prospects or clients can use that software. If all you want to do with affiliate revenue is just make enough money from that affiliate revenue to pay for that software for you for the year, right? So you kind of just want to break even. And I know I'm going off on, this doesn't seem like it's related to the podcast, but the reason why it is or isn't related is because if you have a podcast, it's one part of your brand. It's just a piece of what you do. It's not the thing, right? If we're talking Rogan, Tim Ferriss, biggest podcast in the world, Diary of a CEO, the podcast is their product. None of us here, our podcast is not going to be our product. Our podcast is going to be it could be all of your marketing, and that's our philosophy, and that's how we do it. But it's a piece of what you do, right? It's not everything you do. Having a few affiliate links is okay, but just make sure you're not relying on it for like your income, right? So if you're not doing it, right? Like if you use Stripe, if you use a CRM, if you use Novo, if you use QuickBooks, you should have your affiliate links ready for all of them. Just look at all the software you use, make sure you have all your affiliate links ready to go. Now we're on the most controversial way to monetize a podcast. So controversial that the FTC had to create new regulations based on this particular thing. And it's not just because of podcasts, it's also because of Hawk to a girl and all these little crypto coins that these people are making. But what I'm talking about is selling a guest spot, right? So you become the number one podcast in nutrition or wellness or vegan gardeners in New York or whatever, some very small niche, right? And then you have this podcast and you're kind of the only podcast in that niche. And then people come to you and say, hey, I want to be a guest, right, on your show. And you go, okay, well, it's going to be $5,000, right? And you now are selling these spots, okay? Again, this is the same thing as sponsors, right? Now you're beholden to this person. They paid you, so you got to make them look good, all that stuff. My industry, the podcast industry, they hate that. They don't like that I talk about this way of doing it. As long as you follow the rules of the FTC, if you're in America, then you're good, which is the FTC says you just have to tell the audience that this is a paid sponsorship, right? I know people who sell guest spots for $5,000 a piece and sell them like candy. So I'm not saying it's not possible, but again, these people, their podcast is their business, right? This is like their entire life now, is like selling these guest spots. So yes, the money might be cool. It sounds cool to be like, oh, $5,000, I'll sit on this podcast. But then it becomes a full-time job. So I just want everybody to know that this way exists. In very, very niche cases, it works really well. But this is not something I'm recommending you go out and do. Okay, the big one. The one that everybody and their cousin and their brother wants to do, which is be a guest on a podcast. Now, a lot of us want to start podcasts too, and we'll talk about that. But I have made sales by just being a guest. I've even had it where I was a guest and somebody came to me after and said, I wish that they would have asked you this. I wish they would have asked you that. I wish that they would have let you talk more. They wanted to see more of me. And this is a podcast with 100 viewers, right? And then one of them became a client, right? And in this case, what I'm talking about was a $1,200 sale. And that was just from me being a guest on a podcast, right? So you have, okay, I can attend things that my prospects are doing, and then I can actually become the talent. So, okay, great. I'm going to be a guest on a podcast. So how do I do it? Well, I'll give you an easy website. It's called Podmatch. I know the founder. His name is Alex. He's a really nice guy. I go to podcast conventions. We talk. We do podcasts together and stuff. Really cool guy. It's a paid site, but what it's going to do is it's a podcast matchmaking service. So you're going to get on there and it's going to match you with people who want guests like you. And so it's the same for everything. What you put in is what you get out, right? So if you spend an hour a day on there, well, now you can know you're probably going to get booked on some podcasts. If you spend an hour a month on there, okay, well, maybe it's not worth that $15, $20 a month. But that's what I would do. And in terms of, okay, I know there's Podmatch, great, there's sites. What are some other ways I can do this? Well, I'll give you an easy one. Go on LinkedIn, go on Alignable, go on your socials, right? And start looking up podcasters who have the audience of people that you sell to. Okay? I'm a CPA, right? Imagine. And that would be insane because I'm so bad at numbers. So I would never be a CPA, but just imagine that I'm a CPA, who are magical people who make numbers and stuff work. And that's crazy to me. But imagine if I was a CPA. I'm going to want to go on podcasts about, if I was a small business accountant, I would go on podcasts that have the audience of small business owners. So when I'm the small business accountant and I get on there and I start giving you tax strategies that you've never heard before, people in that audience go, oh, she knows tax stuff. Maybe I'll hire her to do my taxes, or maybe I'll hire him to do my taxes. Or at least when you're on that podcast and you say to the host, hey, I have this thing that my email list that you can sign up for to get a free tax plan or something, then that's how you can do this, right? So always in podcasting, it's always the truth. The longer you wait, the better it gets. If you come on a podcast and the first opening thing is about your business and how amazing it is and all this stuff, right? I told you guys who I am in the beginning, and then that's about it, right? Like, I'm not here to sell. So it's the same exact thing for you. When you're on a podcast talking about what you do, you want to talk about what you do, not what you sell, right? So you want to position yourself as the expert and just be on there giving advice. And I'll tell you this right here because this is going to work for the rest of time, which is giving away everything. That's what my philosophy is because that's what works for me. You can just watch all my videos, listen to all my podcasts, read all my posts, and you can learn how to start a podcast. You do not need to hire me. Now, if you do hire me, that's when you're going to get custom advice, right? And that's what's going to allow you to use, the 10 years of experience that we have to shorten the learning curve for you. But you can do this exact same thing with your business. So you can be a guest on a podcast, you can educate, and then some of those people need what you sell, and then they come to you. So once you do 100 of those or 200 of those, you can basically guarantee results from being a guest on a podcast. But it's both quality in what you say and how you say it, and then quantity in terms of the amount of podcasts you're going to get on. And this leads me perfectly, like a symphony orchestra, like a great Led Zeppelin album or whatever. I'm a big music guy. To the real one. This is the one that works for every single person on this call, which is, imagine this, right? You create this podcast, and on the podcast, you talk about what you do, which means whoever's out there in this call, right? Whatever you do, right? Say you're the CPA, you're the nutritionist, or you're the consultant, or you're the ghostwriter, right? And you just, on the podcast, you go, okay, so you're the ghostwriter and you write content for business owners, right? On your podcast, you go, it says how to write content as a business owner. And you just get on that podcast and you just talk about what you do. You're a nutritionist, how to make your nutrition plans for 2025. Boom. You just talk about it. And then people come to you based on that content. And that is the way to monetize your podcast, is to create a podcast that generates business for you. Again, we're throwing the sponsors out the window. We're not going to charge for the guest. We're going to be the sponsor. So you're going to sponsor your own podcast. And that is how to monetize a podcast if you're a small or medium-sized business. What you're doing is this. You're going, here is a local mechanic shop, and then here's a local mechanic shop with a podcast. The local mechanic shop with the podcast, I now get to see how these mechanics talk about fixing cars. I now get to see how they're going to talk to me before I go in there. And as all of us know, who knows cars, right? Like, mechanic is like the easiest person to scam you in the world. They can just tell you something's wrong, and how are you going to know? So the mechanic who has the podcast, on the podcast, the mechanic goes, oh yeah, don't buy a 2016 Ford Fusion. The headlights cost like $700 to redo the headlights. They're out there giving you advice. Now, it's not that you made the podcast and then the podcast printed money for you. It's that you are a business that has a podcast, and if you can get on and talk about what you do in a way that's not selling, that's just giving educational advice, then in this modern world of 2025, that's how people want to buy, right? People just want to see how you are before they book a call, before they want to buy anything, right? The modern consumer wants it all right now. They want to know how you talk. They want to know who you are. They want to know the packages. They want to know the pricing. They want to know the case studies. They want to know the results. They want everything before they talk to you. Why? Because they can. Because I can hire a vegan podcast producer if I want. I can find one, right? I can hire a mechanic that follows a certain religion that I follow because I can, right? So the consumer now can have it all, right? And so if that's the case, then why don't we give that to them? And that's what we're doing with the podcast. So it requires a strategy, right? That's the difference. That's what guarantees. The strategy guarantees that you generate business from this podcast. But what we can do today is go, listen, are we going to be the next Rogan? Like, no, nobody will. He's him. Are we going to be the next influencer in this XYZ space? Probably not, right? Because that's not our goal. Our goal is to have people who could buy from us. There's a world where all they see is our website. And then there's another world where they don't even get to the website because they're binging our podcast. And once they finally want a diet plan and they finally decide that, you know what? I've been watching this podcast. You know what? Let's just do it. Once they decide, let's just do it, then you're there, right? And they already know, like, and trust you. So this podcast makes all of your marketing so much easier. And as every single person on this call knows, the one thing that we really don't do in our spare time for fun is search engine optimization, building websites, calculating data, right? Like, no. There are millions of people who podcast for free. They actually lose money because it's fun to do. So this will be the only marketing that you do that's actually fun. And if you will prove to me that trying to rank your website on Google is fun, then I would love to see how that is fun. But that's my pitch on podcasting. It'll be the most fun marketing that you do. And be your own sponsor. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I would just look at the companies that you already use, you know? So if you're a yoga instructor and you love these mats, you're like, finally, a mat that, like, I sweated on the mat and it doesn't even, like, I don't even have to wash it, like, or whatever. Like, I don't know what the benefit is. But, like, that would be for me because I sweat a lot. But, yeah, whatever that is for you. Oh, these mats, they, like, engraved my, like, logo in it. I don't know. And there's just mats that you use. Then you just go to that company and you say, hey, what's up? Like, I like your mats a lot. And, you know, I'm like, micro influencer. I have this business. So you can create these custom setups for affiliate links. So if the company doesn't have one set up, then you could kind of create your own. I've reached out to companies one-on-one because, you know, to set up these relationships. If I didn't see it publicly, I would just email. I would actually just go on LinkedIn and start emailing CEO, CMO. I just start emailing people, in-mailing on LinkedIn. So yeah, you can kind of like create your own affiliates basically. But yeah, go beyond the scope. But the best thing you can do is just use companies that you already love, you know. Yeah, so this is all a relationship game, right? Like, this isn't a transactional relationship. Anything with content, media, and the marketing for your business and sales is all relationship based. So when it comes to a podcast, when it comes to building strategic partnerships with people who have podcasts in your arena, you have to take that like you're going to take any relationship or any sale. You have to go into it with no expectations. You have to say, hey, I noticed on your podcast you talked about X and Y. I actually talk about Z. So if you're looking to do an episode about Z, then I'm here. And if not, and you don't want to, or you think I'm crazy, or you don't like my hair, I don't know, people won't do it for all random weird reasons, then that's okay. And then, but if you build 10 to 20 of these relationships, as they see you releasing social media content about what you do, right, and you're becoming the go-to person, then people are going to actually begin to ask you to be on their podcast. But it can all start with you building these strategic relationships with podcasters by just being normal. Just saying, hey, I would love to be, you don't even have to say I would love to be in the podcast. I would just say, if you need a guest that talks about this, that's what I do.